Hello, everyone. Welcome. I'm super excited to be cutting into, and seriously, really, Dave? Really? Okay, just come on in. Make yourself comfy, buddy. Hi, Dave. Anyway, I'm excited to cut into my Christmas papers because my son's girlfriend Desiree was here. We were making some cards and she created these two cards, and I think they are so adorable. And the little jar got me thinking about these photos that I have. So I've got the Keeping Traditions Scrapbooking Workshop on my desk, and I'm going to be using those papers or these papers. Now, this has pre-designed layouts in here. This is a guide walking you through how to cut the papers and put everything together, but I'm going to use the bits and pieces to do my own thing. But if you look at my photos, we were visiting our historic downtown Columbia, and look at these little candy jars. So I want to use these stamp sets here to create that whole candy kitchen vibe. And the gummy sharks, there's a story behind the gummy sharks. I'll tell you more about that later in the video. But these are the two stamp sets here. So we've got Jar of Joy and then Homemade Treats. And these kind of coordinate well together because if you see the little gingerbread guy in there, and I'll show you how to stamp these out, but these gingerbread characters are from this one here. So I feel like they just go really well together. And this has a coordinating punch. And then the sweet jar came out earlier in the year, and that is where the cookies came from. So if you're doing a little holiday baking, you want to make some chocolate chip cookies and put them in the jar. I just think that these are so cute. But anyway, yes, these really inspired me. So I'm going to have to coax Dave off to the side here so I can show you these fabulous papers. There we go, Dave. You just hang out right there. So in the workshop, you get this sticker sheet here, and there's some great title options. And then I love the numbers. If you were doing a December daily and doing like a countdown or a memory of each day, you could definitely use those for that. I actually got two sticker sheets because I got two of the paper packs. But these are the double-sided pattern papers. I've already got them all flipped over. So this is a set here, and then we've got the beautiful traditional colors, and then we've got this set here. Love a good Christmas plaid. And then this Secret Seas gorgeous poinsettias, and then a little red polka dot, and then more poinsettias on this opposite side. And then in the workshop here, you get some bonus papers. Let me grab these. They're kind of off to my side of my desk here. These are the bonus papers. You get two to create a double page layout. And it's got this really nice little scallop border detail and the journaling line background. And then this one, which is kind of a monochromatic grayscale poinsettia. And they have some fun techniques if you're following along in the workshop with that. But these are exclusive to the workshop. There's also cardstock in coordinating colors that come with the workshop. You get photo place card holders. If you're not ready to add your pictures, you could still do the workshop and use these to create the layouts and add your photos later. Last but not least, the workshop includes two punch outs, and I love these poinsettia clusters. They're gorgeous. That would make for super easy embellishing. More title options. You've got these scallop border bits, and they're already, I did not pop this out. They're just falling out, which is really nice. You don't have to struggle to get them out of the little sheets here. So this one popped out of here, but lots of good stuff. Journaling spots, just little accessories for scattering about in your embellishment cluster. And yeah, I think this is going to be really fun to create with. So let me go ahead and bring in my Versamats here. This is going to be a double page layout. So we'll bring in two of my Versamats there. And oh, look at him. Look at his little face. He's so cute. He looks pretty comfy. All right, Dave, we're going to have to pause for a minute until we can get him to relocate. Dave finished his catnap, so I guess we can get back to creating this layout. So when I was looking for inspiration just to kind of get me going on this particular layout, I actually didn't find anything that jumped out at me. So I just printed my photos. And when I do that, I'll print my favorite photos larger, and then I will do some smaller, because it makes it easier. You have more flexibility moving them around on the page. So the treat jars were smaller. I've got a 3x4 and a 3x3. And then this one, I've got my husband and I looking at the camera, in a large photo and then, you know, a candid shot from behind with the candy kitchen counters in the background there. So I made that one a 3x4. And if you look at this layout here, I do really like this one. But again, I kind of overlooked it when I was looking for inspiration because, you know, I knew my photos couldn't be cropped into a square. And so I just kind of moved on past it. But if you look, we have two portrait orientation photos here. There's one photo here in a journaling block and then a row of photos. So I am thinking, and you can see they did use this paper. So I thought, well, let's just kind of go with it and let it develop. So these are bigger, but I can still use them in that same manner that they had them. And then if you look here, actually, let me flip to the back where it's a little bit larger. So you can see they have their two photos offset. They've used the poinsettias, the Christmas traditions, and then the date for the title. And I like all of the goodness they got going on. And then here, so what I could do is I could use this spot for my larger photo. And then what I can do is, this one isn't going to really work. You know, I like my lines to kind of line up. So these fit together. They're the same width. So what I can do is put these in a column and then make that row of photos and put my journaling block right there. So this will just be bigger than this, but still have the two elements. And then I'll move the journaling block there and let's see what happens. I obviously won't be able to use the dimensions provided in the workshop guide because my photos are a different size, but that's okay. We can kind of adapt, but what they have is they have the photos on this beautiful Secret Sea background, and then they have the red poinsettia paper kind of peeking out. So it would be something like this here, and then I can just cut it to fit my photos. And then for the opposite side, so you can see how they have that there. For the opposite side, they've got the green and then the red. So let's bring in these pieces, and the red would be the opposite side of this one. So we can just bring that in, and ew, I do not like my photos against that red background. This is a, you know, an historic gold mining town. So inside there's a lot of wood and yellow tones, and I don't think that looks very nice on that red background. So yeah, we're gonna have to come up with something different for that. What if, let's see, there's a lot of blues in these photos, which I think the Secret Sea looks like. Yeah, that's already way better. So they've got the green, and you know what? Look at the wallpaper in the back of this photo. Obviously it's not green, but do you see that striped wallpaper? Does that not look very similar to that pattern paper? That's kind of cool. I like those little happy accidents. So we can bring this in like they have it there and do something like this. I'm going to want to bring in, now if we go with the same title, that's going to bring that green to the other side. And then we'll have to figure out, because now we don't have any of this red paper over here. So maybe we'll just go with the green on both sides. Then we can bring in some red in the embellishments. And I think that looks nice. You know what? I'm not going to overthink it. I am going to cut these down and let's just let it develop, as I like to say. For my paper cuts, this Secret Sea is 4.5 by 12, and then my green stripe is 4.5 by 10. So we will just situate those there and then bring in our photos. That one will go there. We'll make our little column. And then for the opposite side, my Secret Sea piece is 9.25 by 7, and that should be plenty of room to house these two photos. These photos are 4 by 5.25. And then for my pattern paper, I just need a little bit. I've got a scrap here. We'll cut off some of that. I just want a little bit poking out. This is going the wrong direction, but we're just getting a visual for how much we need, and really just like 1/4 of an inch over there. I'm going to go ahead and cut this piece down. So I've got a couple inches. That gives me some wiggle room if I want to move my photo mat around, but we'll tuck this little guy in here. We'll just dry fit these for now, and I think that's good. I went through and collected all of the bits and pieces that go with this layout. So this is from the sticker sheet. Now I just cut around it so that I can move it around. They have that up there, and they also have, well, here, let me show you the pieces. So if you look at the title, let's go to the bigger one again. They have a piece of pool party cardstock. They've layered the sticker Traditions over Christmas and have this banner with the number 25, so December 25th. These photos were actually taken on December 22nd, so I went ahead and substituted and grabbed that sticker. So you can see, you know, there's not as much space because of mine being larger. And then the poinsettias, so this is project 3. The punch outs are labeled, so I have 3 poinsettia clusters. And then the Traditions is a sticker. They've got that layered right about there. And then again, these look really sloppy because I just chopped around them real quick. But if I want to use it, this way I can test it before committing. And then a journaling block. So I was thinking about this right over here. It is a little wider than my photos, but not so much that I can't live with it. And then they have this sticker, best time of year. So I do need to bring in that pool party cardstock if I'm going to use this, because you know, there's no other pool party on the layout, but I like it because the gummy sharks are blue and we have a lot of blue in the photos. So now we've got poinsettias. You can see here we've got 1, 2, and then they have one here. So let's try that. You can see they have best time of the year down here, so that's why I stuck that there. But let's see what happens. Oh, and they have this little tab also. Let me find that. Here's our little tab. We can put that up there. Maybe put, I don't know, find a little sentiment to put on there. So if we're following along, they have their big poinsettia. This one has pink and red, kind of up there. And then this one just has the red flower. Same here. These two are the same. So we could do something like that. And then they have it right here. It's okay, but just with my style, I want this over here because I feel like we are creating this visual point of interest for here and then forgetting about these guys. Now there are some smaller poinsettias on the sticker sheet, so I could do a little cluster, but I think with a little bit of maneuvering, so this is pretty good size, I could just cut what's hanging off the edge, but what if we just bump this whole thing over and give ourselves some more room? And then we could just put that right there. See how this just naturally opens it up? Not that this is bad. This is still really good. And I think it works well here because they have more white space. It's just different. And then they have the red over here. So that red brings your eye over as to where I don't have that because my photos didn't look good on the red. So an easy switch is to bring that poinsettia to the outside. And I think that does the trick. I do feel like we need to bump this down even more because I want to see that little point there. So maybe if we just bump it down a smidge, and then I still want to bring in my little candy jars. And then I'm wondering if we have a bunch of the scallops. Now these do go to another layout, but I'm not sure I'm going to recreate that layout as is. So this one fell out already with the poinsettia paper. And then you can also, if you have it like a scallop border die, which I do, you could use the paper because this one matches the back side of that green paper. So you could very easily create more if you want to extend it to the opposite side. So this is, let's see, 10 1/4. But what I'm wondering is if we put this underneath here, just to have a little bit of that red and scallop border anchoring our photos, I do think that looks pretty good. And I bet you if we scoot this over and kind of hide the end of it with the poinsettia leaf, we could chop off enough to use over here. So let's see, what do we have? Do we have 4 inches? I'm going to wait on that because I kind of want at least a 4-inch chunk to maybe go under one of these photos. So I like it though. I think that it looks really good. Let's create some of those jars and bring those in. I want to share a little hack for mass producing these if you're going to create a bunch to create some Christmas cards, or maybe you want a whole bunch on your layout. So I have, this is the same jar punch. Now this stamp gives a little bit different look. This one is an outline if you want to use that, and then this one stamps it with the little like if it was a ring, metal ring, you get that detail. So the lid does vary just a bit. And then this one, again, we're using the cookies, but you could do shamrocks for St. Patty's Day or hearts for Valentine's Day, candles for a birthday, and then there's all these cute little sentiments. So either jar, the jars are meant to be the same. I do also want to point out that the detail line's a little bit different. So this one doesn't have the lining across the bottom, but they both coordinate with the punch. So I have the Jar of Joy stamp in here, but again, you could use either one. And I've got some white cardstock. So just make sure your cardstock is seated into the corner. And then I'm going to use a little black ink for my jar here. And then you just want to ink this up and then stamp it down. Make sure you have nice crisp lines. I'm actually going to stamp that again. That's the beauty of a stamp positioner. Looks like I need to re-ink my ink pad. So now that we have that, you can take your punch. I like to flip this over and then line it up. We're going to get a lid too, but that's okay. I'm actually not going to use it. I have a different idea for the lid. So punch, so fast and easy. Now we can use this as our template, right? And then grab some extra cardstock. And then you're just going to punch out a bunch of jars. Now, creating the outline really isn't, the quickest part because you could easily just stamp and punch, stamp and punch. But when we fill in the inside, that is where you can mass produce. So you can see that just pops right into that template we made, right? Do I have that upside down? I think I might have that upside down. Yes, I did. And then you can just do a whole bunch of these and then stamp your outlines. And again, when we are recreating the inside, you just pop it in there and then everything is lined up. So let's make a bunch of these actually, because I do have lots of Christmas cards to make and I'm not sure how many I'll use on this layout. Probably at least 3, but you never know. So let's do, caught in there, 1 more. So again, I'm not worried about the lid. I'm going to do like gold foiling for the lid, I think. So now we can just stamp all of these. I will go ahead and speed this up and just do a couple of them on camera with you, but you can see how easily we just pop in the new one and keep our little assembly line going. And again, this is ideal if you are mass producing these, like to make a bunch of Christmas cards or cute invitations or whatever it may be. So let's go ahead and switch to the gingerbread. Now there's a layering stamp, so we're going to use this one first. Let's go ahead and pop in our jar and then line up your first layer of the gingerbread man and cookies. Pick that up and then the jar is going to stick, but that's okay. We could just put it right back into our little guide. And then I'm using crumb cake ink for this layer. You'll notice I put the magnet on the jar to help that. Now it's just below or above where the stamp is, so it's not interfering with it at all. And then since we can, let's go ahead and ink it up again just to get that nice and crisp. So we'll repeat the process. And again, this is where this little handy tip comes in to play for speeding this up. We can just keep going down the line and making more and more gingerbread men. So this is a fun little Christmas tradition we like to do as a family and go play tourist in this Columbia Historic State Park. And so now I'm going to switch this to that second layer that kind of creates an offset shadow for our gingerbread. And if you line up his buttons and his bow tie, everything else kind of falls into place. So pick that up at the Misty Door. I'm using pecan pie. I want to keep it with those gingerbread cookie colors, but you could certainly do black or red or whatever you wanted to do to add that second layer. So the little town is so festive at Christmas time, and that's why we like to visit. So we walk around the town, we always get candy, and then we have pizza at the local pizza parlor because it's really good pizza. I didn't want to do that. I'm trying to stamp the layer. I put it in a blank jar. Let me switch that back and we can stamp our second layer here. So they actually make the candy, not all of it, but they do make a lot of the chocolates and they make the peppermints and candy canes in this candy kitchen here. Isn't that cute? How cute is that little guy? I just love it. So we will repeat the process, but now I'm going to switch it out with the cookies. So I've got the cookie base here and I'm using pecan pie. No, sorry, I'm using crumb cake for the lighter chocolate chip cookies. We'll stamp those twice. And then let me wipe this off. I have a good idea. Let's put in a jar here and let's make some red hots. We want to bring red in and show that there's all sorts of candies, right? So instead of cookies, just by changing up the color, they are now red hots or hot tamales, if you will. And this is just a great way to get more from your stamp. That's going to lighten quite a bit as it dries. Let me clean this up, and now we can switch to the chocolate chip cookies. So I put my cookie chips back in, and then this splatter stamp is lined up and designed to put the chips in your chocolate. Now we need lids for all of our little jars, right? So I've got a couple already, but here's some gold foil paper. And I love that they positioned the lid on that, hi Dave, Dave's back, on the edge of this so that you can just come in using minimal paper and cut out a bunch of lids. You want to check that out, Dave? What do you think? Do you like the gold? Was that a good choice? So I'll go ahead and glue this to the top of the jar off camera, and then we can use these to embellish. Here they are all adhered together. I think they're just adorable, and we can use them to embellish our page. So I'm thinking of adding them to each of the poinsettia clusters. So we could do maybe one over here and then another one, well, maybe right there. You know what we can do? Let's let's flip this around, and now it creates kind of a little shelf for that to sit on. I like that. That's perfect. I'm not sure if I want to go with more. I created 5 because I was thinking an odd number, but I don't want sometimes less is more, and this might be overkill. What if we put the brown tones next to the red and then move our little, bits over here, our hot tamales, so we have the red spread out a little bit? Do we want 5? Is it too much? Let's see. Let's go back to just 3 and see what that looks like. You know what? I kinda like it. I really wanna use my hot tamales. I'm gonna go with 5. If that's too much for you, you can stick with 3, but it's just fun and festive, and I love it. Now, since I covered up my journaling, we have this little pull tab journaling thing. You can see it right here. They kind of have it going out from the side. I am thinking I can create a hidden pocket behind Hayden to include the story of the gummy sharks. So they do have this pool party cardstock in the example layout. So I'm bringing that in because, again, we have it in the sentiment on the right. So you can see that right there, and I wanted to carry it over to the left-hand page. Now I can go ahead and snip this off so we can extend this red paper and the scallop detail over to the right-hand page. I like to, when I bring in a design element like this, carry it over to the opposite page somewhere. So I've got a couple ideas. Let's slide this back under here. So we see that peeking out, kind of acting as a shelf for these photos. And then for this, it is long enough to support this 4 by 3 photo. So we could theoretically carry this across the bottom here and then bring our sentiment back in right about like that. But I do have one more idea. I do like that. But the other idea is to run it down the side. Now, if I cut that in half and hide it behind the poinsettia, I think I could see enough of it on the top and bottom. Let's actually bring the pattern paper in here just to get the full effect. Obviously, it's not scalloped, but we'll still be able to take in what that might look like as just a strip over there on the right. So again, they had that red paper in the workshop design. So I wanted to kind of bring more red, and I don't know, I almost think I like it better under the photo. So I put that back, and then I decided to add a little bit more green paper. So we just cut a couple of those scraps, and I'm, faking it behind the poinsettia. You won't be able to tell that's not one big piece there. And I know the stripes don't line up, but if I didn't point it out, you probably wouldn't have noticed it. Let's cut off this sprig from this poinsettia because it's completely obscured by our gingerbread cookie jar. And now I can turn this around and put it kind of framing in that corner. Let's go ahead and create a little pocket on the back of Hayden's photo here. So the story about the gummy sharks. When Hayden was little, the boys, they would love to get a treat. We'd go down and play. There's these rocks you can climb on. So we would do that for just something to do. They'd love to explore the rocks and they would beg to go to the candy kitchen. And Hayden would always get a blue gummy shark and he'd carry it around almost like he enjoyed its company for a while, like it was a little pet before he would eat it. Now that he's all grown up, he's really health conscious. This boy is an athlete and he doesn't eat a lot of sugar, hardly any processed foods. So he was waiting outside of the store because he decided it was way too crowded in there. And I'm thinking to myself, what does he want? Does he want a gummy shark? No way, he wouldn't eat it. And I'm trying to text him because we're almost up for ordering. And I'm like, Hayden, what would you like me to get? And, I'm thinking there's no way he's going to want this gummy shark. And he texts back, get me a gummy shark. It made me so happy. It was just so heartwarming that he wanted this gummy shark. It took me back to when he was just a little boy, so excited to get that gummy shark. So you'll notice I didn't leave myself a lot of journaling over here, but I still want to add the details that we were at the Columbia Candy Kitchen and it was December 22nd of 2024. Now I know it's called the Nelson's Candy Kitchen now, but we know it as the Columbia Candy Kitchen. So I am going with that for my journaling. And then I'll add the story of the gummy shark in the pull tab. Isn't it funny how those little stories that probably would not have much meaning to someone else can have such a big impact on you because it takes you down memory lane? And that's what this little gummy shark did for me. This is the kid I asked at a wedding recently. I'm like, "Hey, I found out they have gluten-free desserts. Do you want any?" And he's like, he looks at his watch. He's like, "No, it's 8 o'clock. It'll interrupt my sleep." So the fact that he was willing to eat a gummy shark was just amazing to me. And he was obviously feeling very nostalgic too. I hope you enjoyed seeing how I made this workshop layout work for my photos. Everything is listed in the description box below. And thank you so much for watching.